A 7-year-old girl collapsed in the snow outside a billionaire's mansion. She whispered 7 words that would shatter his world. "Sir, my mama didn't come home last night." What he found when he went looking for her mother would expose a truth he'd been blind to his entire life. And what happened next? Well, it changed all 3 of them forever. This is a story about a child's desperate journey through a blizzard, a mother who gave everything, and a man who had everything except what mattered most. Stay with me, because by the end, you'll understand why one frozen morning became the warmest moment of their lives. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you about a morning that changed 3 lives forever. It was the kind of winter day that makes you want to stay inside, wrapped in blankets, away from the world. But not everyone has that choice. In the busy streets of Seattle, where the rain usually falls but snow is rare, a blizzard had swept through overnight. The city wasn't ready for it. Buses stopped running. Cars slid on icy roads. And in the middle of all this chaos, a little girl was walking alone. Her name was Lily. She was 7 years old, and she wore a pink jacket that used to be bright but had faded from too many washes. Her boots had holes in them. Snow seeped through with every step. Her small hands were red from the cold, and her breath came out in little clouds that disappeared into the freezing air. Lily had been walking since dawn. Her eyes scanned every corner, every street, every face she passed. She was looking for someone. Her mother. You see, Lily's mother, Grace, worked as a cleaner at one of the big tech campuses on the edge of the city. She worked the night shift, cleaning offices while everyone else slept. No matter how tired Grace was, she always came home before Lily woke up. Always. She would slip into their tiny apartment, kiss Lily's forehead, and whisper, "Mama's home, baby." But last night, she didn't come home. Lily woke up to an empty apartment. No smell of coffee. No sound of her mother humming in the kitchen. Just silence. And fear. She put on her jacket, grabbed her little backpack with her stuffed rabbit inside, and went looking. First, she walked to the bus stop where her mother usually got off. Nothing. Then she tried walking toward the place her mother worked, but it was so far, and the snow was so deep. She remembered something her mother once told her during a thunderstorm when Lily was scared. "If you ever need help, baby, find someone kind. Or go to the big building on the hill. The man who lives there, he helps people." Lily had never been there. She didn't even know the man's name. But she knew the building. Everyone did. It sat on top of Queen and Hill, surrounded by tall iron gates and trees. People called it the glass house because parts of it sparkled like diamonds. So Lily turned and started climbing the hill. Her little legs burned. Her lungs ached. The wind pushed against her like it didn't want her to go any further. But she kept going. When she finally reached the gates, she stopped. They were so tall, so shiny. She looked up at a small camera on the post and wondered if anyone could see her. She wanted to press the button, to call for help, but her fingers were too numb to move. The wind howled. Snow swirled around her. And suddenly Lily's legs gave out. She crumpled to the ground, her backpack slipping off her shoulder. The world started to blur. Then she heard a voice. Deep. Urgent. "Hey! Someone's out there." The gates buzzed and swung open. A man ran toward her, his long coat flying behind him. He dropped to his knees in the snow and scooped her up before she could fall completely. "I've got you," he said, wrapping his coat around her tiny body. "You're safe now." His name was Daniel Rivers. He was 41 years old and one of the wealthiest tech entrepreneurs in the Pacific Northwest. He owned a company that designed software for hospitals, helping doctors save lives. People called him brilliant, driven, untouchable. But right now, holding this freezing child in his arms, he wasn't thinking about business. He was thinking about how light she felt, how cold her skin was, how wrong it was that a little girl was alone in a snowstorm. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked as he carried her inside. Lily's lips trembled. She whispered so quietly he almost didn't hear her. "Lily. My mama didn't come home." Daniel's heart clenched. He shouted to his staff as he rushed through the door. "Get the heater on. Bring blankets. Call a doctor." Inside, the house was warm. A fire roared in the stone fireplace. Daniel laid Lily gently on the soft couch and wrapped her in thick blankets. Her little fingers clutched her stuffed rabbit. One of the housekeepers brought hot chocolate. Daniel knelt beside Lily and held the cup steady while she took small sips. "Can you tell me your mama's name?" he asked softly. "Grace," Lily whispered. "Grace Bennett." "And where does she work?" At the big place with computers. She cleans the floors at night. She always comes home. Always. Lily's voice cracked. But she didn't. Did I do something wrong? Daniel shook his head quickly. No. You did everything right. You were so brave to come here. He pulled out his phone and started making calls. Within minutes, he had his assistant on the line. I need you to search our employee records. Grace Bennett. She works night shift cleaning services. Find out where she is. Now. There was a pause. Then his assistant's voice came back, uncertain. Sir, she's listed as staff for the Cascade campus. But there's no record of her clocking out last night. Daniel's jaw tightened. His company contracted cleaning services, but he'd never thought much about the people who did that work. They were invisible to him. Just another line in a budget report. Not anymore. Get the car ready, Daniel said, his voice firm. We're going to find her. He looked down at Lily, who was finally starting to warm up, her eyes drooping with exhaustion. You're coming with me, he said gently. Let's go find your mama. And in that moment, something shifted. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. This was the beginning of something neither of them could have imagined. The drive through the snow-covered streets felt like moving through a dream. Or maybe a nightmare. Daniel sat in the back of his black SUV, and beside him, wrapped in a blanket that was too big for her, was Lily. She held her stuffed rabbit close and stared out the window, watching the white world pass by. We're going to find her, Daniel said, more to himself than to Lily. She looked up at him with those big, tired eyes. Promise? He wanted to promise. God, he wanted to. But he'd learned long ago not to make promises he couldn't keep. So instead, he said, I'm going to try my hardest. That seemed to be enough for her. She nodded and leaned her head against the seat. Daniel's mind raced. Grace Bennett, a woman he'd never met. A woman who worked in his buildings, who cleaned his offices, who made sure everything was spotless before anyone arrived in the morning. And he'd never even known her name. How many others were there like her? How many people did he pass every day without seeing? When they arrived at the Cascade campus, Daniel's chest tightened. The building was enormous, all glass and steel, gleaming even in the gray winter light. It looked impressive, successful, but right now it felt cold. His assistant met them at the entrance. Sir, I've located the night shift supervisor. He's waiting inside. Daniel took Lily's hand. It was so small in his. Stay close to me, okay? She nodded. Inside, the building was buzzing with activity. Employees moved quickly, typing on laptops, talking on phones. No one looked twice at the CEO walking through with a little girl. They were all too busy. The supervisor was a nervous man with thinning hair and a clipboard clutched to his chest. Mr. Rivers, I wasn't expecting. Where's Grace Bennett? Daniel interrupted. I don't know, sir. She clocked in last night, but you don't know where she is now. The supervisor shifted uncomfortably. We have a lot of cleaning staff, sir. It's hard to keep track of everyone. Daniel felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. Getting angry wouldn't help. Show me where she was working last night. They walked through the building, past empty offices and conference rooms. Finally, they reached a hallway near the back. At the end was a small room marked staff only. Daniel pushed the door open. And there she was. Grace Bennett lay curled on the floor beside a row of lockers. Her cleaning uniform was soaked with sweat. Her face was pale, almost gray. She wasn't moving. Mama! Lily screamed and tried to run forward, but Daniel caught her. Wait, sweetheart. Let me check first. He handed Lily to his assistant and rushed to Grace's side. He pressed his fingers to her neck, searching for a pulse. There. Faint, but there. She's alive, he said, relief flooding through him. Call an ambulance. Now. But even as he said it, he knew it would take too long. The roads were icy. Traffic was a mess. No, he said, scooping Grace into his arms. She was light, too light. We're taking her ourselves. Moo. They rushed back to the SUV. Daniel laid Grace across the back seat, her head in his lap. Lily sat beside them, holding her mother's hand and crying. Mama, wake up. Please wake up. Daniel's driver sped through the streets as fast as he dared. Every red light felt like an eternity. Every turn felt too slow. Daniel looked down at Grace. She was young, maybe in her early 30s. Her hair was tied back in a messy ponytail. Her hands were rough, calloused from hard work. This was someone's mother, someone's entire world. And she'd collapsed from exhaustion in his building, and no one had even noticed. How long has she been working for us? Daniel asked his assistant, who was on the phone with HR. Records show 3 years, sir. She's been picking up extra shifts for the past 4 months. Sometimes 12, 14 hours in a row. Daniel closed his eyes. Why? Her file says she's a single mother. Sole income. No benefits. No benefits. No health insurance. No sick days. Just endless hours of work to keep a roof over her daughter's head. When they reached the hospital, everything became a blur. Doctors rushed out. Grace was lifted onto a stretcher. Machines beeped. Voices called out medical terms Daniel didn't understand. He stood in the hallway, holding Lily's hand, feeling helpless. A doctor came out an hour later. She looked tired but calm. She's stable, the doctor said. But it was close. Severe dehydration, exhaustion, low blood sugar. Her body just gave out. Another hour and we might have been looking at organ failure. Daniel felt sick. Will she be okay? With rest and proper care, yes. But she needs to stop working like this. Her body can't take it. Lily tugged on Daniel's sleeve. Can I see her? The doctor nodded. She's sleeping, but yes. Come with me. They walked into a quiet room where Grace lay in a hospital bed, hooked up to IVs and monitors. She looked peaceful now, but so fragile. Lily climbed onto the chair beside the bed and held her mother's hand. I found you, Mama, she whispered. I found you. Daniel stood at the foot of the bed, watching them. Mother and daughter. Together again. And he made a decision right then and there. This would never happen again. Not in his company. Not to anyone. He pulled out his phone and started typing an email to his entire leadership team. Effective immediately, we're changing everything. Because some things mattered more than profit margins. Some things mattered more than efficiency reports. People mattered. Mothers mattered. Little girls who walked through snowstorms mattered. And it was time he started acting like it. Grace woke to the sound of beeping. Steady, rhythmic beeping. Her eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, she didn't know where she was. White walls. Bright lights. The smell of antiseptic. Then she saw Lily. Her daughter was curled up in a chair beside the bed, fast asleep, still clutching that old stuffed rabbit. And sitting in another chair across the room was a man she'd never seen before. Tall, with dark hair touched with gray at the temples, wearing an expensive sweater and jeans. Grace tried to sit up, panic flooding through her. Lily, she's safe, the man said quickly, standing up. She's right here. You're both safe. Grace's head spun. Where am I? Seattle General. You collapsed at work. You've been unconscious for about 6 hours. Work. The word hit her like a punch. Oh no. No. I have to go back. They'll fire me. I can't lose this job. She tried to swing her legs out of bed, but the room tilted dangerously. The man moved forward, gently pressing her shoulder. You're not going anywhere, he said firmly but kindly. And no one's firing you. Please just rest. Grace looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. There was something in his eyes. Concern. Real concern. Who are you? She whispered. My name is Daniel Rivers. I own the company that contracts your cleaning service. Grace's stomach dropped. The owner. She was talking to the owner. I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I've been trying to pick up extra shifts because they cut my hours last month, and rent was due, and Lily needed new shoes, and... Her voice broke. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm a single mom. I can't afford to lose any work. I was so tired. I thought I could push through one more night. Daniel pulled his chair closer to the bed. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. How long have you been working like this? For months. Sometimes 70, 80 hours a week. With no breaks. Grace laughed bitterly. Breaks are for people with benefits, sir. I'm contracted. No benefits. No sick days. I get paid by the hour, so if I stop, I don't eat. Lily doesn't eat. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised her. I'm sorry. Grace blinked. What? I'm sorry. This is my company. These are my buildings. And I had no idea people were working themselves to death just to survive. That's on me. It's not your fault. Yes, it is, Daniel said, his voice stronger now. I built a company that was so focused on efficiency and profit that I forgot about the people who made it all possible. People like you. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the snowy city. Your daughter walked 3 miles through a blizzard this morning looking for you. Did you know that? Grace's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. Lily. She's okay. She made it to my house. That's how I found out about you. Grace looked over at her sleeping daughter. Lily's face was peaceful now, but Grace could see the exhaustion in the dark circles under her eyes. Her brave, beautiful baby girl. I don't know what to say, Grace whispered. Daniel turned back to her. You don't have to say anything, but I want you to listen. Things are going to change. I'm already making calls. New policies. Better pay for contract workers. Health benefits. Limits on consecutive hours. No one should have to choose between their health and feeding their child. Grace stared at him, afraid to believe it. Why would you do that? Because it's the right thing to do. And because. He paused, looking at Lily. Because that little girl reminded me what actually matters in life. Not quarterly reports. Not stock prices. People. Families. Over the next few days, things moved faster than Grace could process. She was told to rest, to recover. The hospital bills? Covered. Her apartment rent? Paid for the next 3 months. And then came the offer. Daniel's assistant visited her hospital room with a folder. Inside was a job offer. Not as a cleaner, as an administrative assistant at the main office. Better hours. Triple the pay. Full benefits. This has to be a mistake, Grace said, staring at the papers. No mistake, the assistant said with a smile. Mr. Rivers was very specific about this. When Grace was finally discharged, Daniel himself came to pick them up. He drove them home to their small apartment in the Georgetown neighborhood. It wasn't much, 2 rooms, peeling paint, a radiator that clanked, but it was theirs. This is where we live, Lily said proudly, taking Daniel's hand and leading him inside. Want to see my drawings? Daniel smiled. I'd love to. While Lily showed him her artwork stuck to the refrigerator with magnets, Grace made tea with trembling hands. This man, this wealthy, powerful man, was sitting on her worn-out couch, genuinely admiring her daughter's crayon drawings. This one's really good, Daniel said, pointing to a picture of a rainbow. You're quite the artist. Lily beamed. Mama says I can be anything I want when I grow up. Your mama's right. Grace brought the tea over and sat down. For a moment, they were quiet, just the 3 of them in that small apartment with its cracked ceiling and drafty windows. Why are you really doing all this? Grace asked softly. People like you don't usually notice people like me. Daniel set down his cup. You want the honest truth? I was lonely. I had everything, money, success, a big empty house on a hill. But I didn't have connection. I didn't have purpose beyond the next deal, the next product launch. And then Lily knocked on my gate, and suddenly, everything felt real again. He looked at Grace, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. You two reminded me what life is actually supposed to be about. Outside, the snow had started falling again. But inside that small apartment, something warm was beginning to grow. Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. Grace started her new job at the downtown office, and with Lily in a good after-school program nearby, life began to find a rhythm. A better rhythm than Grace had known in years. But the most surprising thing? Daniel didn't disappear after his good deed was done. He showed up. Often. At first, it was professional. He'd check in on how Grace was adjusting to her new role. She worked in the operations department now, coordinating schedules and managing communications. She was good at it. Really good. Years of juggling multiple cleaning shifts had made her incredibly organized. You have a gift for this, her supervisor told her one day. Have you thought about management training? Grace had laughed. She'd barely finished high school. Management? That was for other people. But the supervisor was serious. Then Daniel started showing up for other reasons. He'd stop by Grace's desk with coffee. I noticed you like vanilla lattes, he'd say casually, as if it was nothing. But it was something. It meant he'd been paying attention. When Lily's after-school program had a holiday party, Daniel asked if he could come. You don't have to, Grace said quickly. I know you're busy. I'd like to, he said simply. If that's okay. So he came. He sat in a tiny chair made for children, ate cookies shaped like snowmen, and helped Lily build a gingerbread house that immediately collapsed. They laughed so hard that other parents turned to look. One of the other mothers leaned over to Grace. Your husband is wonderful with her. Grace started to correct her, but the words caught in her throat. Because the truth was, Daniel was wonderful with Lily. And Lily adored him. She'd started calling him Mr. Daniel, and then just Daniel. And then one day, Grace overheard her telling another kid at the program. That's my friend. He saved me from the snow. But it wasn't just about Lily. Grace found herself looking forward to seeing Daniel too. The way he listened when she talked, really listened, like her words mattered. The way he asked her opinion on things at work and actually implemented her suggestions. The way he looked at her sometimes, when he thought she wasn't watching. One evening, after a particularly long day, Daniel offered to drive them home. It was raining, and Grace had been dreading the bus ride. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Grace, I'm sure." In the car, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, hugging her rabbit. Daniel drove carefully through the wet streets, the windshield wipers keeping rhythm. "Can I ask you something?" Grace said quietly. "Anything. Why don't you have a family? I mean, you're successful, smart. I'm surprised you're not married." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "I was engaged once. About 10 years ago. But she said I was married to my work. And she was right. I chose the company over her, over everything. After that, I just threw myself into building the business even more. It was easier than dealing with what I'd lost. Do you regret it?" "Every day." He glanced at her. "Until recently." The car felt suddenly smaller. Warmer. "Grace, I need to tell you something," Daniel said as they pulled up to her building. "This, you and Lily, this isn't charity for me. It stopped being that the moment I met you. You've changed my life. Both of you have. And I know there's a power imbalance here, and I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but I just need you to know." "I know," Grace said softly, reaching over to touch his hand. "I feel it too." Their eyes met. And for the first time in years, Grace felt something she thought she'd forgotten. Hope. Not just for survival, but for happiness. The turning point came on a Saturday in late January. Daniel had invited them to his house for dinner. Grace had been there before, but always briefly. This time felt different. More intimate. He cooked. Actually cooked. Spaghetti with homemade sauce, garlic bread, a salad. It wasn't fancy, but it was made with care. After dinner, they sat by the fireplace. Lily had discovered Daniel's collection of old vinyl records and was spinning in circles to jazz music. Grace and Daniel sat on the floor, backs against the couch, watching her. "She's happy," Grace said, smiling. "I haven't seen her this carefree in. I can't remember how long." "You're happy too," Daniel observed. "I can tell." Grace looked at him. "I am. For the first time in forever, I'm not just surviving. I'm actually living. And that's because of you." "No," Daniel said, shaking his head. "It's because of you. Your strength, your courage, your refusal to give up even when everything was falling apart. You did that. I just opened a door." "You opened more than a door, Daniel." He turned to face her fully. "Grace, I need to be honest with you. I'm falling in love with you. With both of you. And I know that might sound crazy because we haven't known each other that long, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Grace's breath caught. "Daniel, you don't have to say anything right now," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know. No pressure. No expectations. I couldn't keep it inside anymore." Grace looked at him. This man who had saved her daughter. Who had changed her life. Who had shown her what kindness looked like when it wasn't transactional. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered. And then, with Lily dancing in the background and the fire crackling beside them, Daniel leaned in and kissed her. Gentle. Tender. Full of promise. When they pulled apart, Lily had stopped dancing and was staring at them with wide eyes. "Does this mean Daniel can be my daddy?" she asked innocently. Both adults laughed, and Grace pulled her daughter into a hug. "We'll talk about that, baby." "But yes. Maybe. Someday." Daniel wrapped his arms around both of them. And for the first time in 41 years, his big empty house felt like a home. 3 months later, spring had begun to push winter away. The snow melted. Cherry blossoms bloomed along the Seattle streets. And in that time, everything had shifted in the most beautiful way. Grace had moved up to a senior coordinator role. She was thriving in ways she never imagined possible. Lily was enrolled in a better school, one with art programs and music classes. She was making friends, laughing more, growing. And Daniel? He was different too. The people at his company noticed. He smiled more. He knew employees' names now, not just the executives. He'd implemented sweeping changes to how contract workers were treated, better pay, benefits, protection. Other companies in Seattle started following his lead. But the biggest change was invisible to most people. It was in the way he'd come alive again. How he'd stopped defining himself by his work and started defining himself by his relationships. He and Grace saw each other almost every day now. Sometimes it was simple, coffee before work, lunch in the park, dinner at one of their places. Other times it was more significant. Weekend trips to the mountains, teaching Lily to skip stones at the beach, family movie nights. Yes, family. That's what they'd become. One evening in early April, Daniel asked Grace to meet him at a special place. He picked her up at sunset, but Lily stayed behind with his housekeeper, who had become like a grandmother to her. "Where are we going?" Grace asked as they drove. "You'll see." He took her to Cary Park, a small overlook with a stunning view of the city skyline, the Space Needle, and Mount Rainier in the distance. The sky was painted in shades of pink and gold. They stood at the railing, looking out over the city where their lives had collided that snowy morning. "This is where I used to come when I felt lost," Daniel said quietly. "I'd stand here and look at all those buildings, all that success I'd built, and feel nothing. Empty." He turned to face her. "Grace, 3 months ago, a little girl knocked on my gate in the snow, and I thought I was saving her. But the truth is, you too saved me. You gave me purpose again. You gave me joy. You gave me a reason to come home every night." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Daniel, let me finish," he said, smiling. "Please." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Grace's hand flew to her mouth. "I know this might seem fast to some people," Daniel continued, dropping to one knee. "But I've never been more certain of anything. You are the strongest, most compassionate, most incredible woman I've ever met. And Lily is the light of my life. I want to be there for both of you, not as a helper or a friend, but as family. Real family." He opened the box. Inside was a simple, elegant ring with a single diamond. "Grace Bennett, will you marry me? Will you and Lily let me love you both for the rest of my life?" Tears streamed down Grace's face. She couldn't speak, so she just nodded. Again and again, laughing through her tears. "Yes," she finally managed. "Yes, Daniel. Yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms. They held each other as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the world in soft twilight. "I love you," Grace whispered against his chest. "I love you too. Both of you. So much." When they returned to Daniel's house, Lily was waiting in the living room, bouncing with barely contained excitement. "Did you ask her?" she demanded the moment they walked in. "Did she say yes?" Grace laughed. "You knew. Daniel told me last week." Lily ran over and hugged them both. "He asked if it was okay. And I said yes, Mama. I said yes because I want Daniel to be my daddy for real." Grace knelt down to her daughter's level. "Are you sure, baby? This is a big change." Lily nodded seriously. "He saved us, Mama. And now we get to keep him forever." Daniel crouched beside them, and the three of them held each other, a small circle of love in that big house. The wedding was small and simple. Just close friends, a few co-workers, and the people who mattered most. They held it in the spring, in a garden filled with flowers. Lily was the flower girl, proudly walking down the aisle in a yellow dress that made her look like sunshine. When Daniel and Grace exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. "You walked into my life in a storm," Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. "And you became my shelter, my home, my everything. You saw me when I was invisible," Grace replied, tears streaming down her face. "You gave me hope when I had none. You gave my daughter a father. You gave us a future." After they were pronounced husband and wife, Lily ran up and hugged them both. "We're a real family now," she shouted. And they were. Later that evening, after the celebration had ended and the guests had gone home, the three of them sat in the living room of what was now their home. Lily was falling asleep on the couch between them, holding her stuffed rabbit. "Do you remember that morning?" Grace asked Daniel softly. "When Lily knocked on your gate?" "Every detail," he said. "I remember thinking my life was perfect before that day. Successful. Complete. But I was so wrong. What is it now?" Grace asked. Daniel looked at his wife and his daughter, at this family he never knew he was missing. "Now, it's full. Finally, wonderfully full." Outside, a gentle rain began to fall. Not a storm this time. Just a soft, steady rain that nourished the earth and made things grow. And inside, three people who had found each other in the snow sat together in the warmth, no longer alone, no longer afraid. They were home. The end. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the coldest storms. Sometimes a single act of kindness can change everything. And sometimes when we open our hearts to help others, we discover that we're the ones who needed saving all along. Thank you for being here with us through this journey. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because we all have the power to be someone's shelter in the storm.